Ukraine has sent 250 of their own military members to Syria to train terrorists. And you know what? Somehow the military full of neo-Nazis training terrorists seems perfectly on brand for Ukraine. Now, specifically, Ukraine has sent troops to train terrorists to use drones. Now, some may have the very legitimate question, if Ukraine is having so much trouble dealing with Russia that they barely have enough men to fight their own war, why are they sending troops to train terrorists in Syria? And to keep it simple, it's because Ukraine views Syria as another front of the same war. A source from Idlib said Ukrainians and Americans are transferring battles from Ukraine to Syria in order to open a new front against Russian forces in Syria. The report noted that more than a month ago, a number of Ukrainian intelligence officials had visited Idlib several times to coordinate and plan attacks against Russian troops. For those of you who don't know, Russia has actually been in Syria for some time now. The reason why is because they've been dealing with the interventionism of the US in the area and helping Assad and Syria fight back the terrorist organizations that the United States is training and arming. In other words, this is another escalation by Ukraine. And this isn't even the only time that they've worked with terrorists in order to try and piss off and further stretch Russia's military resources. They did the same thing and are doing the same thing in Burkina Faso. But the real question is why? Why keep extending a war you know you can't win after NATO has already denied you multiple times? So you know that you will never have NATO's full support and you're just sending your men to die in a war that you have no chance of being victorious. Y'all want to hear my Israel theory? My personal theory is this war in Ukraine is actually not about Russia and Ukraine, but rather Israel. Right now, Ukraine has one job. That's to keep Russia's hands tied. Because if Russia's hands aren't tied, then Russia is free to retaliate in full force against Israel as it attacks Russia's allies in the region. And the only way, really, to keep Russia from just mollywopping Ukraine and wiping them off the face of the planet is to keep opening up separate fronts in separate countries so that maybe you can't win, but you can annoy the hell out of them, and they know Putin strategically is smart enough to not overextend himself, which is more than we could say about the United States. And given what we know about Israel, NATO, and the United States, none of them have any problem sacrificing as many Ukrainian men and young men as necessary to achieve Israel's and NATO's goals. We're basically figuring out just to what degree Ukraine has become a puppet of NATO and Israel. Because from the naked eye, nothing they do seems to make sense strategically. They're sacrificing resources and manpower they don't have in countries they have no business being in. But the reality is, they're just following marching orders, regardless of how many Ukrainian men have to die in order to satisfy the goals of NATO and Israel.